Welcome back to the first episode of 2023 right here on Capes and Tights podcast at capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. We're here to talk about 2022, though. The comic books of the year for myself, Justin Soderberg, and Galactic Comics and Collectibles owner, Paul Eaton. We're talking our top 10 each. So we'll go back and forth on this. We'll talk about a little bit of honorable mentions, some books that we found out about this year that we should have known in previous years, and so much more right here on capesandtights.com. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Visit our website, capesandtights.com, for a bunch more information about comic books, movies, all that kind of stuff. And follow us or subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and all your major podcasting platforms. But for right now, the first episode of 2023, right here with Paul Eaton of Galactic Comics and Collectibles, and myself talking about comic books of 2022. Enjoy, everybody. That's the end of the year, but it's actually a new year. Happy New Year.
It is. Happy New Year.
It's because we are recording this. So originally, I set my schedule for this things like I am now basically booked until the end of March for episodes.
Nice.
In a sense, tentatively. And so I originally had done this back in September, been oh, we'll do it 2 weeks before Christmas, get it all out of the way. And then just stuff happened and pushed into the new year. But I think that there there was a new comic book day on 12/28. And so those issues, if there's anything that comes out that week that's in your, maybe you'll hit my top 10 or not.
I think I have one.
Is that day counts. So maybe it helps make or break it. If we did it 2 weeks ago, maybe that one would have made your list. And so that's where I think that doing this into the new year is a good thing. Some of these things like top 10 movies of the year, you basically could do not much. I don't think much comes out a lot. Yeah.
Like the Christmas Day release stuff. That's one of those weird big day for movies sometimes.
But to me, does that it does qualify for a 2022 film, but in a sense, the majority of the playing of the movie will be in 2022. So it's one of those weird ones where it's well, maybe it will fit. But so doing this in the new year is great. We'll get this out of the way. Not out of the way, but start off the year with a good thing.
Get this out of the way. Let's get last year's stuff done.
Paul did so much homework for this for the past couple of weeks that maybe he'll start planning ahead and start. If a book seems like it might be on his top 10, read it in January.
Read it.
Touch on it in the end of the year. The other thing is Paul's a trade paperback kind of guy, right, dude? So this is a little unique because not all of these have been out in trades yet. So there are some trades for some things. There are a select number of books that come out January, February is the last few issues. And then we'll get the trade before the end of the year. And so that could qualify. So
I read 3 trades. I read 3 complete trades that I squeezed in solely for this homework.
See, there we go.
There we go.
And then
getting it done.
This obviously counts for Marvel, DC, all the independent publishers, all that stuff. If we wanted to do digital stuff, I had contemplated putting 3 Worlds, 3 Moons, entire Substack encompassing thing on there, but I opted not to. So that will be on a quote unquote honorable mention.
I got my honorable mention list.
I almost made this list, Paul, top independent comic books of 2022. But it's top.
Like a news reporter, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. It's top comic book, so it should just be whatever the best comic book graphic novel trades of the year, not just of things. So we're gonna jump in. We haven't done a top list in a while, honestly. You and I, we used to do these quite often.
This used to be kind of like our thing.
Yep. And so now this is a top thing. I want to switch it up a little bit, which is do it more of a snake draft. If anybody's out there is a sports fan and is in a fantasy football, basketball, baseball draft at all, it's you basically sandwich the round. So if we had more than 2 people, it'd be 1, 2, and 3, and then the third person gets the 4th pick, and it goes backwards and so on and so forth. So we'll start with me doing number 10. You'll do number 10 and number 9. Then I'll do 9 and 8, and so on and so forth till we get to the end.
All right.
Throw in as much information as you want. We did make a rule a while back that if yours is already in, don't spoil it. Don't be oh yeah, that's cool. I have mine at number 2. That spoils the rest of the the list if you
Yep.
if you give away the future. But we'll start with some just generic comic book talk. This year, did you see anything big at your store that like you surprised you or
A little bit, I would say. Some of the books on the list, it surprised me how many copies we sold, not only of the first go around, but a second go around, multiple prints, driving a lot of new interest and new readers. It seemed like it was impressive to see. I'd say that was probably my big one. I'm also impressed looking back at numbers. And some of this is probably driven by me anyways, with the amount of trades we're now moving. Lots and lots of trades. But I think you've done a podcast with terrible, I don't remember his name, from Penguin Random House.
Matthew Klein, yeah.
Yes, and he was talking about how like the collectives were more what's starting to push a lot of the comic industry.
Yes.
And I'm seeing that in our store, at least for the amount of individual sales of them. Independent Comics was still our number one. Top seller for 2022 was our indie comics. So thank you all to all of our independent comic creators out there.
So that's one thing I wanted to mention on this, and this is something I've read online. A couple of things at the end of the year here is I hate to say too many. There's too many comic books, and in a weird way to say that. Yeah, it's the weird way to say that because obviously the more comic books that you get in, the more you sell, the more money the shop makes, the more successful you are, and so on and so forth. However, there sometimes is a point where it can be harmful to an independent comic book retailer like yourself because you might disappoint a customer that walks in the door that says, "Oh, did you get that X, Y, and Z comic book?" Well, it's like, well, it's from some random publisher out there or independently published or whatever, and that you have to take the risk as an independent retailer on those books. So you mentioned
inventory dollars that get set. If
you mentioned second printing, I felt like one of my themes of this year I saw a lot of was second, third, fourth printings was a very, very high number of books that go into those second, third, and fourth printings.
Yeah.
And the funny thing I think about it is that it's putting the onus on the comic book retailer to buy the books, and they're not taking the risk by overprinting. It doesn't make any sense. Like if you think about some XYZ Boomer Image book made X amount of copies and then go, oh wow, we sold a lot of them, so we're gonna sell the second printing of it. But they're then not taking the risk of let's print too many of them and us have too many of. It's a weird way of like,
it's this new lower projection on that first and being like, oh, and then it's easy to say, look, we sold out. Well, if you reasonably thought, like, let's say 50,000 copies are going to sell, and just to make sure you didn't overprint, you printed 40,000, then you're like, look, we sold out. Well, of course you did. Like, and then, oh, we're going to second print. But
I don't know. That's a big thing I saw this year, which was almost too much.
There's a lot of second printings and a lot of stuff. Like for us, we got second printings being dropped, and we still had first printings here. So like, I didn't order them. But you run into that same thing, like you said. People come in and be like, "Well, I want the second print to add to my personal collection because the cover may be different in some form or whatever." And I'm like, I still have first prints, so I didn't order them. And now I've started doing that. Now, like second prints come in, I'm like, oh, I still have first prints, but I'll get 2 or 3.
But that's the discussion I had with, I listened to a podcast of a retailer from Ireland, which is a unique perspective on things. Is that he stopped doing that because the 3 issues that you potentially order, you may or may not sell. You might be buying into losing money. And so it's like he's making this decision that like there's certain things where he's just like, I can't, if I don't know the creator, if I don't know the publisher, I'm not going to take a risk on it unless someone orders it from me at FOC or tells them well in advance. If they don't hear any buzz in the store at all about a specific comic book, they doesn't even, find it somewhere else because I can't take the risk of having it sit in the back stock for years and years and years. And then, from a random publisher that might not be out there that you don't know. So it's there's a lot out there. And I feel like it's not even just independent. You mentioned independence number 1 was a lot of independent comic books. Is that Marvel's putting out a ton of shit. Like,
there is.
I was talking to my wife about it. I was like, I'd almost rather have the books move to $4.99 across the board and have less books out.
A little, maybe higher quality control.
Yes, higher quality of their books. You don't need 17 X books. You don't need 50,000 Batman books. You don't need all these things.
I thought X-Men was being reined in. Isn't that the whole point of this whole big Hickman rein in?
Well, I thought Hickman was also going to be the architect. He has nothing to do with it anymore.
I couldn't even tell you what the hell they all are. There's so many X titles. Somebody asked me, I'm like, I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Let's say let's do X-Men, X-Force, Excalibur, whatever you want to do.
Excellent, X Terminators.
Do 3 X books and put all the stories into one. Do 1 Fantastic Four book, maybe there's like 4 Spider-Man books. Like it just feels like there's too much.
Star Wars. Woo.
Star Wars.
I wrote Star Wars 5 times last week.
Yeah, that's insane.
Five Star Wars books.
And so, like, the Bounty Hunter series was cool for the first 4 or 5 issues. And so, my personal opinion on it is make it a 5-issue miniseries and move on with it. But like, that's the weird thing this year. I just felt like every time you put out, I mean, you had at least 3 or 4 times this year, maybe 5 times this year, like largest list ever. And it just kept on going and going and going. And
60s and 70s in the amount of titles coming out in a single week that we carried. 60 or 70 titles a week, which is cool. And it's great for us to say. There was one of those weeks I specifically remember going, wow, we did not move very many books from being like, there's a week that like 40 titles comes out. Yep. And you look at the rack and they got cleaned out. I'm like, okay, we're, sitting pretty there. I almost need to reorder a few of these books to put into backstock.
Yeah. Because
I feel like they'll do something later. I'll have people looking for them. And then the weeks that we had 70 titles and like, there's a ton still sitting to move. I'm like, wow, that's not good.
And obviously it's paper supply issues and all this other crap too. But like the number of times that issue 3 came out and then issue 4 came out the following week because of scheduling.
Yep.
And it's like someone myself who has a lot of books on their pull list. It's like, well, that just puts more pressure on me for back-to-back weeks to pick up those books. I thought I had a month, 3 weeks between issues. So that's the other thing about it is that I saw. I did like that there was a lot of mini series this year in the independent side of things. Like not a lot of bundling. Like I like that idea of 5 issues, 4 issues, 6 issues to be done with it. So that's a positive thing this year that I saw. I will say that I locked it in. What did I say? Saturday night? I said I locked it in.
Yeah, you said you were done. I was still reading comics this morning, Justin.
And no Marvel made my top 10.
I have one.
I had one. It was number 10, and it pushed out just because I felt like there was. But here's my caveat to the whole thing on this. Right before we get into this thing, actually get into it, is I read less Marvel. So in all sense of thought is that if you read less Marvel, there's gonna be less in your top 10, unless there's a outstanding book. And I will say, as a big Marvel, Marvel zombie over here, is Marvel needs to do something because, in my opinion, independent's going to it's not going to ever take over because obviously Marvel's the big 2. It's going to be the big 2. Yeah. But like more people are going to start buying independent because they're not getting the stories that I want to read that I miss with Brian Michael Bendis in that era of Marvel. So
with the Marvel stuff,
bring back some cool Big E events that are like actually worth reading. And I'll probably have one in next year if there's some good books this year. But like there was nothing that stood out to me.
I'll be interested to see our list, and I have this fear that I missed things because it's hard to remember now what came out this year and what came out the year before.
I had to do some research.
I researched this a bunch, and then I tried to go off that, and then going through here trying to grab backstock of things to read that. Then I go look, I'm like, oh, well, we sold out of that. I can't even read that if I want to. So I have a fear of that this may not be the perfect list by the time I'm done. And I'm like, I'm representing the comic shop. I'm supposed to know all this. Like, this is my jam, right?
But I don't.
Oh man,
there's so many titles.
There is.
Makes it hard for you to do it. So I also said to myself, like, if your number 10 was, I didn't read it, but everybody came in and said they loved it.
Right.
That could be a top 10 from a retailer. That's a different side of things than it is from an actual person, just as a customer. So, couple audible mentions. I'll go over mine for a couple here. I had. Okay. The one Marvel comic book that fell out last minute Saturday was, honestly, and I don't think you'll expect this, She-Hulk.
Okay. All right.
I thought the covers were great on that book. I thought the story is great, focusing more on her law career, kind of like the TV show. So that to me was like, okay, that is a comic book that I'm worth reading. And again, it just fell out because there's so many amazing independent books that I love this year. You'll probably have it in your top 10, which actually fell out of mine. What's the furthest place from here? Year 0. Again, towards the end of the year, I got into that, so I didn't have enough. Boogeyman was in my top 10, and then it fell out, and that's from Ablaze. And then what was Last Flight Out. I really liked Last Flight Out. That was one of those ones that saddled the year, I believe. and then a trade came out this year, which made me really like it.
Yes,
I liked it a
I
lot.
still want to read that. I haven't actually read that yet.
And then we made the rule of 2 issues had to come out this year, and I think that's what it was originally going to be 3, and I moved it to 2 because I actually looked up a couple of books that have from previous years and things like that actually had 2 issues released in 2021 and 2022. So it's like that book then to never be in a top 10 is weird to me.
Right.
So
by the way, I cheated.
So I moved it to 2. I moved it to 2 issues, yep. But there's 3 books that I had that I just need more, and that's Dead Mall, Specs, and The Approach. Those 3 books were ones that fell out because they're just I just need a little bit more. I believe they have a chance to make next year's because of the number of issues. And then I want to say the Department of Truth, but I can't because
you know what? I'm going to be excited for our book club to finally be forced to sit down and read Department of Truth.
Maybe we'll make next year because we'll read the trade this year, and then I'll get into the ongoing series more.
Right.
But yeah, but that's a bunch of honorable mentions. But I just feel like the list could have been 20.
I have a good list of honorable mentions here,
and so we'll go into that. So I want to hear a couple of yours there, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, so interesting honorable mention, which you did say 2, but The Last Ronin, because that actually did finish this year.
Yep.
We got issue 5 to wrap out The Last Ronin, which also led to The Last Ronin trades in stock and a lot of hype for that. We went through tons of figures, so I put Last Ronin in honorable mention.
And that's also kind of funny. As another conversation I heard someone else have about top 10s is what about books like Last Ronin were oversized? So yes, it only had 1 issue this year, but it's an oversized issue, and the series took a year and a half, 2 years to tell.
Took about 2
5
years
issues. So that's not fair. That never is it only the one that the most issues came out in can be the comic?
Right.
And so I can understand that being an honorable mention.
So I honorable mention The Last Ronin. This was one that fascinated me. So I did a bunch of research to try to get an idea of the books came out this year to make sure I didn't miss stuff. And over again, there is a book by Kate Benton. It's a graphic novel called Ducks. It's 2 years in the oil sands. And I have now ordered this to read myself. And that's the reason I put it in honorable mention, because so many lists had it. I was fascinated by it. I completely missed it. I never saw this book at all. And I just wanted to mention it because I was fascinated enough that I ordered it.
That book was David Harper of the Off Panel Podcast, #1 book of the year.
Okay. I can't wait to read this.
He read the book. It's one of his favorite comic book creators too, but he read the book and then he said he put it at #1 and it never moved all year. So
I'm really excited for that to land here at Galactic Comics because I've ordered that to read it. I included Earth Divers by Stephen Graham Jones. Yes. This was a book I did not get a chance to read because we have sold out of almost every copy in the store of every print. I'm waiting for the second prints to drop. But it is such a fascinating background story, and we've talked about it so much in the store that I feel like Earth Divers need to be honorably mentioned. A little self-promotion on 7 Years in Darkness, being the fact that we finally got our first in-store variant, our first variant cover. So 7 Years in Darkness, Joe Schmalke, fantastic book. I can't wait for that series to drop nationwide. I'm so excited for that.
I will tell you right now, there's a pretty good chance that makes the actual list next year. We'll see.
Oh, I think so, yeah. In a couple Marvel books, for one, just because it was a summer arc, I included Judgment Day. Yeah. I can tell you, I dug through stock. I found some copies. I tried to read it. I have
so many people who love it, too.
I know people love it. People love it. It was on almost every list. And maybe if I had the trade, I don't know. Sometimes I have the trade and I sit there and then I can get into the whole thing. I could not get into it if this was a floppy format thing for me. There was no way I was going to pick up more of it. But I did include it because it was the Marvel Story Arc of the Year by Kieran Gillian, Judgment Day, and then the Fantastic Four Full Circle by Alex Ross. Yeah. That came out in graphic novel form only, and we have sold out of it every time I've had it, so I haven't had a chance to read it. And I tried to find at least a bit of a digital read on it, and there really isn't much out there. It's actually a pretty short book. It's only 64 pages. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to read Full Circle, but I wanted to include it. So that's my honorable mention list.
Where'd my phone go? That's great. I love all of those stuff. I'm usually into the AVX and crap like that too. I just couldn't get into to the Judgment Day stuff. It's just weird.
Like Judgment Day was hard because we had Avengers versus X-Men. Yeah. Now we just included Eternals. That I don't. Most people that I talk to don't care about Eternals. I don't care about Eternals.
I'm over here crying. Sorry, my space heater was
thinking
on.
about it.
Like, no, I'm just like over here. I'm like, oh my god,
just thinking about how you can't get into Marvel.
The air's drying out in here, and I'm like, I don't want to make it look like I'm like sad that you didn't put a Marvel book in your top 10. Like,
but my honorable mention for that, I figured it was worthy to bring up in this podcast.
Yeah.
And how do I want to say this? It was definitely more successful than the previous year's Marvel story arc of the summer. For as far as the store went, we did sell quite a few copies of it, but still not like mind blowing.
I just what I don't understand is how successful, how successful it's been in the future or in the past with like Bendis and those like Civil War and Secret Invasion and all that stuff, and how they can't just say go back to that. It's like they can't go back to the well because they have to do something different. And
now I feel like they're trying to somewhat go back to the well of just reusing it, which that's not a win either. But I don't know. We need a unique original take on something in Marvel, and we need it to be like fire. Like it's got to be.
Are you surprised that it didn't come out as Secret Invasion 2?
A little bit,
Everything else, Civil War 2. What was it? The Infinity Secret Wars 2. Civil War 2. I wanted to like that so much. Like I really wanted to like it so much. But,
I really hated that.
But
I really hated that.
Worst things. And then at the end of this, as we get past one, I do want to talk about a couple of prior books that we discovered in 2022 that we just said we should recommend reading. I actually made 3 on that list.
Me too.
So there you go. So let's get started here, buddy. You ready?
Yeah, let's do this. All right, so you got 10 and 9.
Let's see how many publishers I have on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 publishers. That's pretty good.
Okay. You know what? I took down a lot of info. I didn't put down the publishers, so I actually don't know.
We can test it at the end because I do know, because of the fact that our site, capesandtights.com, is broken up into when we write something or put something on there by publisher. I have a pretty good idea when these publishers are for these comic books, so we'll get into it. And I actually pulled mine, but that's just because they're right here in order.
Yeah.
And so
I have at least 4, maybe 5 publishers. Okay. Yeah.
So number 10 for me, and this is the only book on my list that only has 2 issues out. Okay.
That's impressive. Good job.
And that's just because I liked it so much. It is the 06 Protocol over there at Aftershock Comics. Lee Turner, and Cliff Richards. Secret government programs, like that's to me is like one of those things that like why I want to like the Department of Truth so much is this whole like conspiracy theory, secret government stuff. Me recently, The Recount, love the political thriller.
I literally just thought I didn't include that on my new reads of the year, and I should have put The Recount on.
See, there you go. Family Secrets, action, some of the best artworks. One of the things I love about I took a course from Ben Bishop a number of years ago that was on like one of these websites about how to draw, like whatever. And just I wanted to watch Ben and his way of drawing. And one of the things he mentioned about how comic books should be written a lot of times and drawn like movies, in the sense that like you want to watch the motion and the angles and the cinematography to it. And in this book right here has one of the best angled panels I've ever seen in a comic book. And I was going to pull it out and look at it, but I forgot. I don't want to do this one, but I'll see if I can find it at some point and show you, Paul. But like this is like there's some sort of angle in here that just made it above and beyond. Again, comic books are different than novels. It's because there's a whole experience involved in it, and that's reading the lettering, the panels. And that's why
it all has to flow, which I think probably to a degree makes it more challenging in creation. Yes. Everything has to flow. And
so this is why my number 10. I think it's great. Aftershock put this out this year. Again, there's only 2 issues, but it's an ongoing. So, or at least it's going into 2023. So I don't know if it's ongoing, but whatever.
Right.
Protocols are my number 10. So let's hear number 10.
Oh, you're not doing 10 and 9?
No, you're doing 10.
I'm doing 10 and 9.
Okay. You do 10 and 9.
The draft one's getting me. All right, so I cheated. This was my cheat.
Okay,
there's only one. There's only one. I was really excited about this story. Know Your Station, by Sarah Gailey. It's a new series coming out. It's a future murder mystery involving like space travel and people leaving the Earth and kind of like the rich taking over. I don't want to get too cocky, but I think I already solved the murder mystery in the first issue, but I wanted to see where this is going. But I definitely want to see where it's going. The artwork is fantastic. Just really unique and interesting take on an old murder mystery.
Yes.
I really enjoyed. I don't remember another comic that I read that felt similar to it. So that was my Know Your Station take. So that is my number 10.
Yes.
We have a long way to go on it, where we only got one issue this year.
Yeah.
So that was, or last year. So that was kind of a cheat, but that was my number 10.
But I'd love to, like, I'm gonna write a note down and say I'd love to, like, find out next year if after reading all 5 issues,
all the way through,
whether or not you're like, oh, maybe I need to swap that out. I agree with you on that. Book is unbelievable. I think that's over at Boom, and that's one of the, they're just hitting over there at Boom.
I love Boom.
I feel like I have a bad time trying to find weaknesses at Boom Studios right now, but yeah, that book's a really good book, and again, artwork's great, angles, like that's another one of those ones with the cool almost camera angles in it. I
feel like it sucked me in like instantly, and it read very much like I was watching a series or a movie. So Know Your Station to me was an excellent read for number 10. So if we go on to number 9, this is my one and only DC pick, which I'm sure you have several on your list.
We'll get into that.
So Poison Ivy by G. Willow Wilson. For me, it is definitely a fascinating story arc on the Poison Ivy stuff. It's been a while since I've read like more modern DC, so I missed what would be the backstory to where we got to where she is now, but it fills in enough for me that I'm not like totally lost. And I feel like this is a great look at really the mental state of the character. She is going out to really try to end the world, and that's not usually like the Poison Ivy. She's not usually big picture, right?
Yeah.
You know, like most of the Gotham villains are really trying to destroy Gotham for whatever reason, but that's kind of the end of their interests. It's mostly a battle with Batman or whatever. And she is really an eco-terrorist, and has kind of just, it seems like she's mentally had enough, like is done and defeated, and this is like her right off to the world. She's heartbroken, which is an interesting side of the story, seeing that weakness to her, and it goes into it a lot. I read the first few issues of that, and we'll definitely finish the story out. And I don't know, the worldwide hazard she's creating like is really terrifying when you get right down to how powerful she could really be with it. So Poison Ivy hits number 9 for me.
That's awesome. I love that your DC book is a non-direct Batman Superman or Joker.
Yeah, and it's not like it's not the big DC story
connected, but
it's there, but it all is, thus far it's just her.
Yep.
It's her, and it's like notes and it was very well. The art is fantastic, and I love the way it's like little bits of thoughts and like cliff notes she's writing and this and that you're getting in it, in a great layout, like fantastic layout to Poison Ivy. So that's
awesome. My number 9 is Dark Ride over there at Image. So Image Skybound, I should say, because it's actually a Skybound published or whatever book.
Yeah, I don't entirely get the
it's like all these different studios now have like their thing. It's weird. Like it's like, Stupid Fresh Mess actually does I Hate Fairyland, but they publish it at Image. It's a weird thing. But
yeah,
Dark Ride. So I have not been a humongous fan of Joshua Williamson and other stuff. Like he obviously has done Batman, I believe, and done other major properties or Superman or whatever the hell he did over at DC.
He had another big indie one back in the day too.
But to me, I mean, obviously Nailbiter is absolutely astonishing. And so he continues to make amazing horror books with Dark Ride. And amusement parks, it's one of those cool things. Amusement parks, horror, mystery in it. There's just so much good stuff, and their artwork's amazing. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like someone trying to have that like more rough or a more realistic looking Scotty Young style. And I felt like I could definitely picture Scotty Young being the artist on a book like this. Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of a darker, more gritty, I Hate Fairyland aspect of it. So like there's this great colors in it. It's a great book in general. And that was one of the ones that snuck in there because I'd only read issue 1 when it was getting ready to be released to preview it or to review it. And so like, I don't know, Friday night, I was like, let me read the other 2 issues that are out right now. And it just got better and better and better. There's some family mystery in there. There's murder. There's all kinds of cool stuff that happens in there. But the fact that it's based around an amusement park is just different. And that's why I think it's amazing. It's like, what else have you seen recently that's based around amusement parks? And then it's also a horror. It's a horror amusement park. That's the best part. It's not just an amusement park that horror happens at. Like, you go there to be scared.
And I think it's a horror theme in the first place.
Yes.
And then, it's not so made up.
Yes.
That is one I wish I had read for this, because I actually, that was one I missed. And I can tell you that the week it dropped, I sat down and was able to skim through enough, because I love Nailbiter. So I said, I got to check this out. And instantly through a skim through, I said, I'm going to read the trade of this. Like, this is going in my personal collection, no doubt. If that had been a trade format, that's probably one that would have made my list. And I forgot it going back to doing floppies.
Also, like Stray Dogs, in 2020 or 2021, whatever.
Yeah.
Stray Dogs, awesome variant covers that are like they have like the Disney-esque variant covers for these things. And those, like, I think they're ratio variants or whatever, but like you have like Snow White, and they have a bunch of other ones that are made that are pretty cool. But I think they did a Beauty and the Beast one that are like right around this thing, but it's kind of cool, like playing that those movies aren't really horror movies, but making them into horror cover. It's cool. They're really cool. Number 8 for me, Clementine graphic novel. It's the only graphic novel on the list. I typically don't read as many graphic novels. I like the floppy, you know that. Obviously, this is released in graphic novel format, so obviously I can't read the floppies of it. I love the fact that it expands the Walking Dead universe. I'm always a fan of this, the side stories to the main storyline. I also love the fact that it's a sequel to the Telltale video games, and it's in grayscale. Like, that's my biggest thing to me, black and white grayscale, because that's how the originals were made. And it's for all ages. One of those things that's cool that The Walking Dead, a lot of people, it's a horror comic book, so people are like, oh, that's for an adult, gross, grotesque. The fact that this is a young adult book, I say all ages, it's young adult, which is pretty cool. So it's over there at Skybound Comet, which is their young adult version of it. I couldn't have picked a better person to do the book. Tilly Walden is an unbelievably creative artist and writer. And so I'm glad that she was able to pick this book up and get chosen to do this. There's a book 2 coming out, I believe, in 2023. It might be 2024. But this is just, again, it was too good for me not to put it on my top 10. And
it's awesome.
I'm glad I have a graphic novel on the list, because, again, not typically something I do. I do floppies, floppy discs.
Fluffy discs. That was on. I saw that on a lot of lists, and where I still haven't even finished The Walking Dead yet. I didn't read that one.
Well, it's funny that you could read this to skip it, because it doesn't really have anything to do with it. It just has to do with her journey, and growing up in the zombie apocalypse isn't very easy. Did you know that?
No, I wouldn't think so.
And I also, for people who out there, you don't have to play the video games to read this either. That's the thing. It's a continuation of it, but they give you enough of a backstory at the beginning of it to say, okay, who is Clementine, and so on and so forth. I also love the name that her name's Clementine. Like, that's just a fun, like, unique name to me. And so yeah, Tilly Walden did everything in this. She's missing a leg.
Like, you would think cool. Clementine, you would think would be this happy, joyful, oh, by the way, zombie apocalypse.
And I like it that much because I have it bookplate.
Oh,
which I don't know why I don't stick it in there, but whatever. You're on to what, 8? 8.
Number 8 for me, Step by Bloody Step.
Ooh.
By hopefully I don't butcher this, C. Spurrier, and it is a wordless fantasy, which is funny because this book came out. And it's another one I gave a quick thumb through and said, oh, I got to check this out when it drops. And the trade came out. I've been meaning to read, we're going to air quote, read the trade for a while now. And this was a perfect opportunity where I said, okay, well, now I've got to read it. And sat down. And I guess in that initial thumb through, in a quick look, I didn't realize that there is absolutely no writing in it. Besides a quick, I don't even know, like a bit of almost like a poem at the beginning of each chapter. There's nothing in it for actual reading, but it sucked me in. The art is unique. It's clean and messy. It's Scotty Young-esque. It's a bit of both. And I swear I could literally hear like the book as I'm going through it. I think it may have taken me longer to process this than just reading a book. I really didn't want to miss something.
Yeah.
And I would go back sometimes and go a couple pages and go back to a page back and look again to go to the next page. An interesting story, how it brings you around. And it's, I don't know, it was very like in depth in feeling, and from a parent's perspective of it, I think, which was interesting for a book that didn't have a single word.
Mm-hmm.
So for uniqueness alone, I think it'd be worthy of a top 10 in this list. It was great. Step by Bloody Step. So that is my number 8.
It's only a 4-issue miniseries, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, it kind of has to be. If you did like an ongoing series that didn't have any words in it,
yeah,
a little much. No. But it's one of those weird things. I almost made the joke. Who lettered it? Who lettered the book? The uniqueness of that, and it's one of those things that I feel like it's also an opportunity for us to say there are books without pictures. There can be books without words, and that's my cool thing about it. Is there is times where I just find myself reading a comic book instead of in experiencing the comic book, and that's one of those ones where you can't, obviously you have to look at the pictures.
You don't have an option.
Understand, you have to see the nuances in each image to understand what the heck's going on in the book.
I feel like it drew me in the way We Live did, where We Live created a uniqueness with the ability to play music to it that they composed for the book. I feel like not having any text in it, Step by Bloody Step, drew me in that sort of same, making it another experience. It was deeper than just, like you said, somebody reading through. And I've had books where I blew through it and then was like, I didn't feel like I processed it as much because I just kind of went through really fast. And this didn't give me that. I feel like I didn't have a choice but to really focus on it, of what I was taking in. So Step by Bloody Step was a unique and interesting pick for the year. It's something I would definitely recommend. Young adult wise, I would recommend. I don't know, anyone looking for a different experience. You've had enough of the same old. I don't know if that Scotty Young had a club, but I think it'd be an interesting book club discussion.
Scotty Young have a variant of that, right?
Yes. One of his personal website
on his website experience. Yeah. That's pretty cool. That's actually pretty cool. Which makes sense if you think it has that Scotty Young-esque style to it.
Middle West, I feel like the artwork of Middle West, which also Scotty only did some covers here. He didn't do it, but I feel like it fit right into a created Scotty Young world.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
7, right? You're on 7?
Yep. My Marvel book. All right, you ready for this?
Yeah.
Banner War, Thor versus Hulk.
Okay.
It surprised me. Honestly, I almost didn't pick it up. I grabbed Judgment Day and I'm like, all right, this will be like my one Marvel take on the year. And I'm like, well, you know what? The Thor Hulk crossover was big this year. We sold tons of Thor books, tons of Hulk books, tons of this Banner War book. I'm like, let's give it a try. Banner War is done by Donny Cates and Nadia Shamas. I feel like it's an interesting twist on an old battle. You know, this is a common Marvel. Let's get Thor and Hulk fighting it out. We had to see it in the first Avenger movie. This is, maybe two of the biggest and strongest of the Marvel universe going head to head.
Yeah, it's an ongoing battle in a sense that who's stronger, who's the strongest Avenger? Is it Thor? Or is it Hulk?
Is it Hulk? Yeah. I thought it was an interesting twist. In standard Donny Cates-ness, I felt like I did get interested into turning the page. I feel like Donny Cates' writing usually keeps me interested. And it's funny because whether I really like it or not, I can't help but I want to read more of it. Which I want to read more of this because this is a weird Hulk background. I don't know that I like what Donny's done with the Hulk. I much prefer the Al Ewing stuff of Immortal Hulk that came before this, where it got us back to the old horror feel. I don't really like what he's done with Hulk in this at all. But at the same time, I wanted to see where it's going.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I don't want to blow a lot of this out for people that didn't read it and spoil it all. But it is really weird to me what he did with the Hulk in this. But I definitely want to continue it. And like I said, and Donny Cates, I think, does a great job writing this stuff. More and more of his books I have read, and I still don't know that I really have loved that many of them.
I'm more of a fan of his independent work than I am his
I almost think I like the idea of Donny Cates writing more than I like Donny Cates' writing.
Correct. Yes.
But at the same time,
so here's the deal. I think he's a creator we need. I think he's one of those creators we need. I think that Donny Cates, and sadly enough, Chip Zdarsky had mentioned recently he's starting to slowly work away from comic books. I mean, it's not going to be right away, but he's probably going to retire from comics in the next few years. But Chip Zdarsky, your Donny Cates, Al Ewings, those are the kind of people that I want to see in comic books, and I think we need him. And I think his name sells. I think whether Marvel likes his comic book writer or not, I think his name Donny Cates sells books for them. And so I think that's a good thing. He's a person we need in the industry. Again, I don't know. Like I said, I think you're right. I like the idea of Donny Cates more than I actually.
I'm excited. I see Donny Cates, I get really excited, and then I read it. And I'm like, did I enjoy this?
Mm-hmm.
I read it, and I couldn't stop reading it. Like most of the stuff he writes, I can't stop reading. But then I look back, I'm like, did I actually like it?
Well, it's the crossover for me. Crossover is that book for me as well, where it's like I read it and I've read all 13 issues that are out so far. And I'm just like, I love reading this, but I don't know why. Like it's just the weirdest thing. I need to know what happens, but I don't care.
I have another book like
that book.
I have another book like that on my list. We'll get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think of all of the Marvel stuff that dropped this year, and that's a hard part. Like there's a lot. So there's a lot, and I'm sure there's probably some other great Marvel stuff I missed this year. I thought about the ASM stuff. I didn't just reading synopsis baseline. I didn't love what ASM was doing and what they're doing with Spider-Man with the Beyond stuff. So as much as I love Spider-Man, I didn't even get into that stuff. But I thought for as popular as that was, and as well as Marvel spread it between two titles that stayed like every single time Hulk drop and Thor drop, we were selling tons of issues, if not selling out of it. I'm glad I picked this up, and I will probably finish this run, even though, like I said, the Hulk side of it was really weird. But yeah, and you mentioned Chip Zdarsky, which I almost grabbed the Daredevil stuff, and I couldn't put enough of it together. Yeah. But what Chip Zdarsky had done with Daredevil, I love so far. So I think that'd be worth kind of like an honorable mention to Marvel of that. Was the Daredevil run was a really interesting
Daredevil run, and then the Devil's Reign part of it too was a big thing for me in 2022. I liked that thing. I something from now at this point, Marvel has to like, whoa, for me to actually want to put it in a top 10, because there's just so much good quality independent stuff out there. There's
great quality stuff out there. The independent scene is hot. And I totally get it. And yeah, I agree. Marvel needs to.
It's also how you feel for the year. I feel like this year I just felt like reading more independent.
Most
of the books on this list, if you look at right now, so you have Dark Ride. It's based in real world, quote unquote, with the twist of a horror comic. 06 Protocol is based in the real world with secret government agencies. Clementine based in the real world with one small twist, which is the zombies.
You've just had enough of this of the superhero stuff.
For now, we'll come back to it. I'll read that book that will get me caught back in there, and I still buy it and I still collect because I like collecting some of these big titles. But for me, this is my only DC book.
We have a DC book, and I expected it. I thought that'd be in there.
Number 7 on my list is DC Black Label. So yes, this is not an official DC canon universe.
We're not going to see Batman in here.
Nope. Is Nice House on the Lake by James Tynion IV and Alvaro Martinez Bueno. Okay, so this just finished, right? I mean, this last issue hit right before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Another horror book. Again, horror's a big thing for me this year. I think it has that. It's just messy enough artwork that James Tynion IV loves. Is that
I want to say Tynion?
It's Tynion. Tynion. I just like to say James. No, just kidding. The fourth. We'll just call him the fourth. That has just enough messy. That's not messy like, I hate to say messy, but grungy, rough. Like Department of Truth is, and it's not more clean like Something Killing the Children is. It's right in that middle, that mix that makes it worth reading and continuing to look for. I think it's awesome. This is it's kind of like granting wishes too, because there's that whole idea you get what you want, you just write it on a list. It's pretty cool. Not everything is what it seems kind of thing too. The mystery behind it, the 12 issues made it really cool. I think there's a lot of like the flashbacks and forwards. I think the idea that it kind of does seem like if the world's ending around you and you have this bubble to be in, and you should feel lucky, but I also understand the idea of feeling sad for the people that are outside.
And almost cursed by the fact you're
Correct.
stuck there.
Yeah. So I think he's one of the most fantastic writers that have been alive in history. And I think this book right here is great. I think it's gonna be a great TV show when they inevitably maybe get into some sort of TV show, a 12 episode series that literally follows one issue.
It's right there. You can just pick up and go.
Or 2 6-episode, 2 series or 2 6-episode series. I think it would be great. So James, the fourth, makes the list with Nice House on the Lake, DC Black Label. Also interesting to know where he goes to different books. It's kind of interesting. See DC Black Label, you've got Boom. He's now over at Dark Horse. It's interesting where, I'm sure it was, I'll write Batman if you let me do this.
Right.
And then he just was one of the few people just to say, I'm done with Batman. Because most people get fired, quote unquote, from Batman.
Right.
He was
your time is done here.
So now he's full independent. He doesn't do anything that he doesn't want to do, which is really cool on that. And then we'll move on. Go ahead.
Okay, so I got 2 thoughts on this. For one being, would he be the person to bring Marvel back? If they brought him into Marvel?
I think he would.
Can you imagine what he would do with Marvel?
You would want him to run it, even if it's just bring him into Marvel for one mini series, 5-issue series. I want him to do Marvel Zombies.
Yep. Okay.
I think that'd be badass, or some sort of like House of M-esque.
I can see like this.
Bring a Marvel
House
horror.
of M, if you really think about it, can be a horror very easily.
Yes.
This terrifying idea that you can't be in control of your own thoughts and your own body, but you're still kind of trapped in it. Like
some sort of House of M. I would like him to do something for horror for Marvel. I don't think it could. But I do think if one day they offer him a massive paycheck, I could see him doing it, because he does other things that are not like, he does some things that are more not horror based. Like you have your Department of Truth, which is not really horror based. It's just it's a horror. It's probably considered a horror comic, but it's more political thriller.
Yeah, it's definitely more thriller, I would think. So my other just my thought on this one was I waited for the trade for that to drop. It was probably one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and I have to say I was just a little let down. I'm excited to read that now that it's wrapped up, and I probably will read book 1 again, and then read book 2 when it comes out in trade format. I'll sit down and read both together. I was a little let down by it, but it also could be the way that I read it because of reading that whole first half of the run and then having to stop.
I think it's one of those ones that it was written as a 12-issue series.
Yeah.
Compared to
it took a while. It's been a while for this 12 issues.
Yes. And they had a break in the middle there and the pandemic and delays and all that stuff. But like you have some books that are ongoing that just have stories that continuously go. Where like when you read issue 1, you want to know what happens at issue 12. Like you want to know the end of it. Right. And that's the thing. I think that's part of it is the fact that you actually, this might be one of those ones that you have to read 1 through 12 to actually get. And that's why I think a 12-episode series would be great on a TV or a movie. If you do a movie on it, because I feel like you need to know the beginning and the ending in a setting, because if you don't, it might just be irritating to a lot of people or not understand it fully. Yeah.
I'll be interested to see where that goes when I get to finish that. But that didn't make my list, but I think it was an absolutely a major book to be on the list.
It also has to me that every book or any book who someone reads a James Tynion the fourth book after reading something Still in the Children is always going to be a letdown, because it's like seeing Star Wars movies after seeing the first Star Wars movie. Everybody's like, well, nothing's going to end up
going to compete with that. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a award-winning movie; it's never going to compete with the first 3. And so that's the same thing with this. I feel like even though some of these books came out before some of the children that he's written, they're never going to be able to compare to that. I think in the hype and the love for that book. So that's another thing that has to do with it.
That's fair.
Number 6, Twig jumped up into the top 10 after I read it again. I think this book is fantastic. I think it's a Scotty Young. It's up there with I Hate Fairyland with me now. I think there's the fact that he's not drawing it is frustrating to me. But in the same sense, I feel like Scotty works with artists that if someone didn't know it wasn't him, they would understand it.
Unbelievable, the art. Yeah.
The other thing about it is, I think if he continues, I don't think he should ever do a book ever again that Jean-Francois Below, how do you know how to say it? Jean-Francois doesn't color, because that coloring is what makes some of his books stand out so much. Nothing to say about Kyle Strom's artwork on this is great. I just think the coloring is what you just coloring the wording from Nate Pico. It's like those things in this book, and then the writing, amazing, crazy creatures, a quest. There's amazing comedy in there. It's charming. I love how they do travel montages, so you don't actually see them traveling from point A to point B. It's like 6 panels, boom, 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 traveling across this fantastical world, and you don't actually have to see all the different places, which is awesome. I think that's one of the good things about this book. It's one of the best looking books of the year, in my opinion. The one thing I will say, it's timing is everything in it. And that to me is, I had this happen to me once in designing beer cans. I designed a beer can called Side Country. This is a number of years ago for Warner Brewing Company. It was a 2-dimensional ski slope with trees, and you just see the tracks through the middle of the thing. It's called Side Country, like a side country of a ski slope. I literally sent the file to the printer to get printed. I got the proof back. Cool, sounds good. Go to print. The day after that, a brewery in Portland posted a picture of a beer called Backcountry with the exact same color scheme and a very similar piece of artwork. Neither one of us knew this was happening. Yeah. It's just great minds think alike at the same time in the same mindset. And I think that this book came out right as Strange Adventures, or whatever the hell it was called, Strange World from Disney and Disney Animation.
Okay.
That has a creature in it that's a sidekick in the movie called Splat. And there's a Splat in this that looks very similar. And the fantasticalness of it and the creatures and the different things that are going on in it are almost like if you were drawing a comic book and watching the movie and you just seeped into the book. But the movie was created and the book were created separately. They didn't know each other were happening, and it just happened to be at the same time. So I can see someone faulting either one of those for copying each other. But they're obviously different. There's a different storyline to it. There's no actual humans in Twig. They're all creatures, where there's humans in Strange World. But like I said, the funny thing is I'm reading it again and I go, oh my God, I'm gonna call you Splat. Is that okay? And the freaking character in here's name is Splat. And I was just like, and they're in this adventurous, weird, like creature world. It was just too much for me. So I gave Strange World, the movie, a less of a rating because this is superior. But it was just weird. It was like this weird how great minds think alike, and it was in the same time. And I was reading it again, and I'm like, that sucks that this happens like this because it pulls some. I mean, how many people, Paul, though, read this and watched that movie, though?
Right.
Like, I'm in that category with a small child, and I love watching movies.
That it falls in, right? I'll probably end up seeing the movie. I imagine at some point it will be on at my house with the little ones. The girls will end up with it.
It's a good. I think it was better. People will say it's not as good as it is. I think it was a pretty good movie. So don't. But Twig to me, and there's more. There's more coming, which I'm really excited about on that side of it too. But I think Twig is the epitome of Scotty Young's writing, in my opinion. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. I think it's encompassing in a 5-issue series or 5-issue arc that you've got beginning to end and understand what's going on. We'll see what happens in the future.
I sadly did not finish Twig. I started Twig a while ago and was slightly disappointed because it felt a little too familiar-esque to the Scotty main character, sidekick, adventure.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I didn't get roped in and was sadly, I wanted to like it and just couldn't fall into it at that point.
Yes.
So I put it down and I said, you know what? I'm not going to force myself to read this. I'm going to come back to it. And I'm sure, next read through, I will probably enjoy it. And it could, you know how it is. Sometimes it's your mindset or whatever. Anticipation. I've been waiting for it. And the trade came out and I grabbed the trade and I said, all right, here we go. And maybe I just wanted too much. I don't know.
I understand that Middle West has a person in the site. I mean, I hate Fairyland.
I hate Fairyland.
There is this. Oh, if you think about it, Rocket and Groot, like there's this.
Yeah, Rocket and Groot. Yeah, your character and your sidekick. It's just kind of chilling out.
So you do have that sense in it, but I mean, like I said, I don't know.
The quest, the Rocket and Groot, we're on a quest, and I hate Fairyland. We're on a quest, and Middle West is kind of a quest. Like I mean, it is. It's a travel. He's running away, so Twig is we're on a quest, and I don't know, for me it felt a little too familiar, so I'm looking forward to reading it again, sitting down and now I'll have a different mindset. I know what it is. I don't have this crazy buildup of anticipation for it too. But like you said earlier, when you watch Star Wars, it makes the rest of them really hard to compete.
Yes. But the other part of it is we are more in love with Scotty Young's artwork. So it doesn't matter if the book's good or not.
Yeah.
If the variant covers are great, if his other stuff is great,
Variant's beautiful.
if his books are okay, but this one to me was, I think I said, like one of the best visually, and Kyle Strom fits perfectly with Scotty.
The artwork in it is perfect. I think Scotty's done a great job of choosing artists and colorists and things that do all of the perfect blend of what he already has.
Yes.
If you
he's not doing a realism style artwork.
Yeah. We're not all of a sudden into this, like,
color pencil looking, like, sketchy,
we're not
beautiful.
It's not Capullo or Jock or it's not any of these artists that like would be completely opposed to what it looks like. This looks exactly the way a Scotty theme would be, I feel like.
Yeah. Sweet.
So I think it's been seamless in that you wouldn't notice.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Are you in number 6?
Number 6. Hell to Pay.
Yeah. Nice
Charles
choice.
Soule, I'm gonna once again probably butcher this. Will Silney.
Mm-hmm.
I love the unique background story to this. The idea of these coins escaped from hell. That somebody somewhere along got out of hell and took their currency with them. And of course, there's 666 of them in the world, and they have to be tracked down. And each time a coin is spent, it's like you get a little wish that changes and alters our history.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's so unique. The idea of choosing something in history that wasn't, it's not the dinosaurs disappearing from the earth. It's not this all altering thing, but it's a little twist, and you're like, that's how it happened. It wouldn't have been there if the person hadn't spent the coin. So I love that. Fascinating background. Unique backstory, and an instant adventure. Like, you're just you're into an adventure. It reminds me of Once and Future that I've enjoyed. The adventure side of it. It takes place in Europe, and it just, I don't know. I was instantly hooked into Hell to Pay. So book 1 and 2 have dropped for the year.
Yeah.
And that was one that number 2 came out, I think, on the 28th. It was right there.
It's also, I feel like, somewhat different for Charles Soule's stuff. Like, he's done a lot of political thrillers, stuff based in, like, and then he's done Star Wars, and he's done like post-apocalyptic or like dystopian books. And so it's really cool to see this like other side in a sense. It still fits in his realm, but it's not like
it's fantasy, it's adventure.
It's
like reminiscent a little bit to me of oh my gosh, Dan Brown's book, the Da Vinci Code.
Yes.
For the adventure side of this, and traveling through Europe and having history involved in it, bringing up things and saying that the coin had caused. I was just instantly sucked in.
I guess my point is that when I saw it on the previews, I did not immediately go, that's a Charles Soule book. Right. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like when I've seen a Charles Soule book in the past, I'm like, oh, that's Charles Soule. Like, yeah. But to me, it didn't scream and jump that. And so that's just like remember I was like, oh my God, how did I not see this? And that's the thing to me I think I love about it, is that I love the idea that sometimes books become amazing because they're just different, for whether they're different for the artist or the author, or they're just different in the sense that there's no words in it, like step by step. Like, that's the cool stuff like that. So yeah, awesome. What's we moving on to number 5? Number 5. Now 5 and 6 could have been flipped and flopped. I had a really hard time. There was no Once Upon a Time at the End of the World by Jason Aaron. For me, it was simply easy, just instant hook. I said it's an instant hook. It was the same way Dark Ride, where I flipped through it and said, well, I'm definitely gonna grab the trade of this. Once Upon a Time in the World, by the time I was on the 3rd or 4th panel, I'm like, yep, I'm in. Like, the synopsis of it sounded interesting when it dropped, and what it was going to be, and seeing it in previews, and then it lived up to the expectation and hype I sort of had for how this was going to go. The artwork it's another one of these clean but messy. It's got that rough edge to it, which I'm just starting to enjoy that artwork. I don't know. That's kind of like it's. Well, I said I didn't make my list, sadly, but I love the book. But I'm just saying it didn't make my list. It almost made my list just because of the cover artist. Michael
cover art is beautiful, and there was the first one had the glow in the dark of the like the acid rain. Yep. One of the most sensational covers of the year for me, I think. Like, it was unbelievable, and when you looked at the cover, it was nice, but doing it in the dark, unbelievable. The silhouette of the person and the what looked like the acid rain falling. In this dystopian future, you've got crazy monsters running around, people trying to survive, and nobody can trust each other. I don't know. Well, and exciting, like fun at the same time of being that terrifying that these people are, out there in this crazy world, but also it still had this like comedy and fun part to it. And Jason Aaron's another one of those writers that when I see his name, I usually go, I'll probably enjoy this.
Yeah, and I'm liking his creator
I generally do. I generally like Jason Aaron stuff.
Jason Aaron, we're writing over at Marvel and stuff like that's been great, but I think that like this creator-owned project is a standout to him, in my opinion. I think it's some of his best work. I like the part of again. There's just so many books that I just can't. Yeah. And so like some of these ones like Hell to Pay and Once Upon a Time likely would be able to be on this list if the third or fourth issue came out. And I was like, oh yeah, it's definitely up there. But there's just too many books that had 3 or 4 issues that came out to make the list. So both those books you just mentioned, Hell to Pay and Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, are unbelievable books. But can we just stop making titles of books that are freaking sentences?
Oh my God. So
I swear to God.
I think DC's worse. But when I go to make the quick list of the week for people to see, and I have to leave an entire page out because the title's so freaking long.
Oh, I laugh too because I'm like thinking to myself, I think I saw it might have been this book that they were jokingly comparing, or Once Upon a Time, jokingly comparing at the end of the thing, saying it's similar. If you like this book and this book, or any other book with a really long name, you like this book. And I think it was pulling it out. That was pretty funny that they had that in there. I mean, like I said, look at the books. That Nice House on the Lake is fairly long, but like so far, Dark Ride, Clementine, one word. The O6 Protocol is pretty short. Twig. But next one for me,
I finally have wordsy ones.
Yeah, right. Number 5 for me is Crashing. Which I actually got a bone to pick with you, Paul. This is the only issue of Crashing that I physically have, and it's a cover C of number 2. So I will need to be talking to you about trying to get 1 through 4 or 5
That's
now.
Very strange, because I swear to God, I've ordered those for you.
Yeah, probably, but we'll figure it out. But Crashing. This is the guy you talked about earlier, Matthew Klein, who was on the podcast to talk about him and Morgan Beam. Did this book, drug addiction mixed with superhero medical treatment. Fearing the different, hospitalization, not wanting to do emergency services on superpowered people because they're worried about the liability of it. It's based at Mass General, which is cool because we're in New England here. It's kind of cool bringing that New England aspect into it. It has bits and pieces that are comparison to the Superhero Registration Act in Marvel and politics involved in it and secret underground medical treatment. It's an unbelievable book. I think it's great. I think the drug addiction part of it's the huge one to me, that not a lot of books have focused main parts of it that have to do with drug addiction.
not a lot.
And this one has to do with the fact that she's addicted to pills, but like she tries not to use them, but then she finds herself stressed out that she has to potentially use them. It's this whole thing. And it's also a great involvement into the medical industry and how they're treated and how hard they work and how long of hours they work and so on and so forth. Artwork's amazing. I think it's kind of fun. It has a similar Tilly Walden and her Morgan Beam have a similar art style. This is obviously the cover C, so it's not her actual artwork for Morgan Beam, but the inside of it's pretty good. The variant covers are great. This whole like pills and aspect of it. There's a couple that have like the big pill on the front of it. I think it's just a great book. Crashing, finishing up here in 2020. 3, and it's by IDW, which is one of their new, not creator owned. IDW originals. They're called creator driven,
which is a unique thing for IDW that they've done, because before most of their properties were major. My Little Ponies and Ninja Turtles and GI Joe, and
so they did about 5 or 6, maybe 7. And I've got actually coming out in 2023, I had a couple guests on here that also have creator-driven project coming out at IDW as well. Earth Divers was an IDW original.
Before coming over, I was reading Dead Seas, which is an IDW creator-driven
title. So number 4 for me is this author and artist's best book ever. Ready for it?
All right.
Public Domain from Chip Zdarsky. I say that he's writing Daredevil. He's writing Batman. He's written all kinds of other books. Sex Criminals. So many good books. This is the best one yet. And I think it's partly because you and I love the comic book industry. I love on this side of it being more on the reporting and press side is the seeing the movies being made and the TV shows being made and all that stuff. And on your side, people coming in speculating whether that's gonna be made into a TV show or anything like that. And then the creator rights and all those things. And I think that it's written from the heart. I think it's written with truth, but also exaggerated a bit, as well as he's calling out the big publishers that are actually calling them out. I mean, he works for both of them. So you can't be like,
which is talk about your inside knowledge. Like he's been there with all of them, so, and this being creator owned, that's an interesting, like, hey, this is a bit of what I dealt with.
And he knows, he goes, but the thing about it is this is majority of the creator rights problems that he talks about in this is back in the Stanley, back in the, Siegel and Schuster, those days. There is still issues with the whole, here's a $5,000 check for whatever, people nowadays when they're signing those deals to work for Marvel and DC are more aware of the fact that they're signing over. They're basically a work for hire. They know that if they create a character, they're likely not going to get any money for it, and so on and so forth. So whereas back in the day of Simon and Schuster, they didn't actually
understand.
They did, but they didn't see where the future was going.
No.
Now we kind of see where the future is.
Yeah.
And so if anything, it's going to get worse than it is now, like meaning that it's not going to be as big. Whereas back then, I don't think when they created Superman that they thought the fact that he was going to have a major motion picture made of.
Well, like back then, those comics we discussed this in the shop the other day. They were like made to be thrown out. Yeah. They were made for a kid to read. This was back in the days of the 5 and dime books that you pulp books. You would literally buy entire books to read and throw in the trash. They weren't made comics didn't have the idea that they were ever going to do anything that they're where they are now. If you went back and talked to these creators from the 40s and 50s and early 60s, there was no way they could conceptualize what we're at now.
Yes.
I mean, look at the technology that's changed and the markets have changed of all of it. So yeah, those were the people that really got, it's like the olden days of sports where they were paid athletes in the sport they played and then had to go get a job when they weren't playing that sport because you didn't make the kind of money that athletes make today.
Now they're making $45 million a season.
Right. There was no retirement package for these guys.
Nope.
Stuff like that. Completely different. It's a whole different world. So I think that's fascinating. Now, that is one I saw on numerous lists. And if I had copies of it to read, I probably would have read that to check out. It is definitely, you've got some on there that I can't wait to read in trade format.
And this is coming in trade, obviously, as we know that too. But this was actually originally released for Substack, part of his Substack deal. And it was a thing where you get every month you get a new issue or whatever before it actually came out. And then it was published every month from Image. This is one of those ones that he was going to write as a quote unquote retirement project, meaning that like he'd do an issue here and there. He'd be done with Batman. He'd be done with Daredevil, even though he told DC, his ship was like, I'll write Batman until you fire me. And so he's going to write it for the foreseeable future. And this project was supposed to be that like back end, like, okay, I'll do it here and there. Maybe a couple months will go by before an issue comes out. And then the Substack deal came. And he goes, this is an opportunity for me to do that on Substack. And so that's when this happened. This is an ongoing series, volume 5 issues. Volume 1 is now out, or the 5 issues are out. The trade's coming. Yep. And it's just well thought out. There's nobody telling him what he can and cannot do. I think that's huge. I think that's one of those things that like Sex Criminals was amazing, but he had a partner in that. And so that he had 2 people working on it. This where it's just him. I think he says it's a lot of work, but it's just, he literally does everything in the book aside from editing it. It's Chip Zdarsky's book. I mean, obviously you want to have someone else edit the book, but he writes it, draws it, colors it, letters it. It's all him. And so I think that's a great example of what Chip Zdarsky can do. I think it's a lot of fun. That's part of it's also that fact that this comic book within a comic book. It's that basically if they wrote a comic book about your comic book store,
right? It's
that aspect of it, like based in real life. And his goal is, he's no promises. His goal is to create as real to real life as possible. No monsters, no superpowers, no nothing. It's literally based in this real world, but fake. If that makes any sense. So it's one of his best works, if not his best work of all time. And that's saying a lot for Chip Zdarsky, I think, especially him writing Daredevil and Batman right now. So
absolutely
4 for you.
All right. Saga. Brian K. Vaughan. I would think this was probably one of the most highly anticipated books of the year after a 2.5 year wait from a cliffhanger
Mm-hmm.
to people having to wait forever. And I was surprised the amount of new customers that came out of the woodwork for Saga for us. We ordered them in, selling them out every month. People that I only, sadly though, it's funny, I only generally see these people for Saga.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they read. That's it. They're done. They're not buying other things while they're here. You can't buy a variant cover if you wanted to.
It's not uncommon, honestly. I've heard this story many times from many different people. I've heard podcasts of retailers that there's the Saga people, and that's what they do. They just read Saga
and end all of comics, the beginning, the end. We're done. We're not looking at trades. We're not buying Funko Pops. I'm here for Saga, and then I'm out. See you later.
Yep.
So weird for that. Different. The shocking new developments in the series of Saga. The giant cliffhanger ending from the previous run, where I was like, it's not gonna go the way I'm seeing. Like, I'm sure it'll be fine, everything will be okay, and then you find out, nope, it's not fine, it's not okay. In typical Saga form, wrote me right in. I get asked this by people who've never read Saga. I don't know how to answer the question. They say, is Saga good? And I go, no, but it's not like literary. This is not something you're going to recommend, I feel like, to a casual reader, in my opinion. This is not going to ever probably go down as one of the greatest creations in all of comic kingdom. I don't know. But at the same time, it is one of the most page turning books I've ever read, right up there with Nail Biter, where I just cannot, once I start Saga, I can't stop Saga. It's just constant. I gotta find out what's happening.
If we ever got, Paul, I hate to say, because obviously the creators are the people who create, like there is Eisner Hall of Fame and all that stuff. But if we ever got a comic book Hall of Fame, meaning that they took books themselves, public domain or whatever, put issue 1 on the shelf and said, this is now in the Hall of Fame. I think Saga would make it solely based on they would be the role player on a hockey team that never was really, 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 really outstandingly good, but was on multiple Stanley Cup champion teams. Kept winning
the cup.
Played played 80 games a season instead of, every year he was in there. It was a stalwart player, but wasn't amazing. And I think that Saga has this aspect of it being a really good quality book with no real specific, and it's sci-fi, but no real specific category to put it in.
Soap opera, it even makes fun of soap operas while being a soap opera. And that's what I tell people about. It's a soap opera. I think that's why it has unique readers. That we have those certain people that come in, that's all they do.
Well, it's like your readers. I hate to say it, it's not the same.
They're roped into Saga. You're sucked into it in the way that people, from what I gather, are sucked into soap opera. Really,
it's your Vampirilla customers too.
Right.
It's that aspect of there's people who just read Vampirilla, and that's just who they get and what they read. And Saga is one of those things. It's a very, very good quality book. I personally think that Why the Last Man is his better book of creator-owned stuff than Saga, but that's just me. I think it's again that
I think
post-apocalyptic style of it, but
I think between the two, Why the Last Man would have more of a relevant.
Yes.
It's more thought-provoking.
Yes.
Than Saga, where Saga is it's interesting, and I love it's huge and it's giant world built and it's political and there's so much stuff to it. But at the same time, it's kind of a trashy soap opera.
It's a soap opera in the sense too that if he wanted to write 517 issues of it, he could. But he knows. He knows. So is it 100? Is it 100? What do you say? It's going to end at issue 100. He has it set.
This could go on forever without doing the superhero problem of going on forever, where you start resetting and eliminating things and erasing.
I could have sworn, though, he said that. I gotta see if I can find it here. He said somewhere that he has it in his brain that Brian K. Vaughan will write this as long as Fiona Staples. Yeah, as long as the two of them want to do it, that he had it he's gonna do up to issue 119, whatever it was, whatever it made. 2 compendiums or a number of whatever it may be.
And then we're done.
He's done. He says that's it. Done. It may take him 10 years because he may take another 2-year hiatus.
Right.
But he says that's it. It's as long as she wants to do it. If Fiona Staples says I'm done, it'll end early. But he says that because he's not going to have anybody else. It's Brian K. Vaughan, Fiona Staples.
I think that's perfect. Because I wouldn't want to see an art change to it. It's I don't know, man, and the art in it too is terrific. And this one specifically, when it ended, it hits you like hard to me.
It
maybe
came
the
back strong.
most in-depth ending of any of them so far. But yeah, Saga, I think it has to hit the list because it's so relevant for comic and how big this series is. But yeah, this is one, it could go on forever and ever and ever, and never duplicate. And
Saga's return came back strong to it. It didn't I hate to say it, but like Spawn is just holding steady.
That's just sort of.
I mean, your Spawn numbers are skewed anyway. Your Spawn numbers are skewed anyway because you're Spawn.
Yeah, you can't get my numbers.
But Spawn is just there, and they're gonna sell. They're gonna make their money. They're gonna do it. They're gonna have Spawn fans like myself. But Saga's one of those ones that you take a big hiatus like there. The fringe readers stop reading it, but then maybe I read both. Was it volume 1, the book 1 and book 2, right? There's 225 issue, whatever it is, books for Saga, whatever it is. I've read both of those, and then starting collecting floppies. I might have replaced the fringe person from before. So there's new Saga readers that bought it in 2022, along with the diehard people that maybe the people who bought it 2 years ago stopped buying it when it went away, and like maybe lost interest in comic books or just didn't care anymore. Like, so there's a replacement. I don't think it gained a bunch of readers because I think the gained readers were the lost readers and then the core readers. I just think it's amazing how Brian K. Vaughan can have a story like this that's not, I don't know. Could any other book? I think the only other book on the market right now, maybe not. I'll think about it. I mean, there's another book I want to see. Think about it before we get to number 1 that could take a 2-year hiatus and still have
hold strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll go into 3 though. 3. Boom Studios. Grimm from Boom Studios is my number 3.
I'm terrible. I didn't read that yet.
Grimm.
Well, I read the first issue, and that was another one that was like, okay, I'm sold, but I haven't read it yet. It's in my stack to read at the house.
The only thing I'm gonna say is it's a unique take on the afterlife, and it's a stunning looking book. I think the covers are unbelievable. I think the simplicity of the characters in it. Stephanie Phillips is an unbelievable writer, and I do believe that Fabiano is an unbelievable artist. And so the book itself, I'm just hooked on it. I love the idea of the Grim Reaper, and not like the very first issue. You don't really know, like the Grim Reaper's like this one, like you work for the afterlife, you work for bringing people from regular life to afterlife. They're just journey basically to this, but the people who work in the office of the afterlife don't actually get to talk to their major boss. This is the Grim Reaper, and there's levels of like people in charge, and it's kind of like this office. I love
the business of death.
Yes, exactly. And so I think it's a very unique issue, a very unique book. I think it was one of my best horror books of the year in that sense too. So I don't have a lot to say on it because I just think it's such a quality book that I don't have to sell it on anybody. I think you just grab it. It's great. It's awesome. Grim. I think you should read it.
I can't wait. It's another one I can't wait for. And actually, I feel bad that I didn't read Grim.
No,
and you know why I probably forgot is because I bought it as a trade. Yeah. It's in with my trades, and I'm like, I'll read it, but because I'm so far behind in reading, I didn't think of it. I'd already put that into my collection.
We talked about second printings. It's also one of the rare books that happened that the second printing was actually worth more than the first printing because there was a limited number of second printings. Oh. And that was one of the ones that FOC'd the second printing before the first printing even came out. Remember that?
It didn't even come out. Yeah. Yeah. Which is super hard. It's even worse as a comic book store owner to try to figure that out.
Number 2.
Okay.
Something's Killing the Children. Something's Killing the Children by Mr. James Tynion IV and Werther de Aldra. Okay, so do I even need to say anything or just put it down and have you go to It continues to amaze. They continue to amaze me that this book has not. There's been small dips in storyline that have said to me like it's good but not perfect. But then it just goes right back up, and I'm like, oh, how the hell are they doing this? And Something's Killing the Children to me is up there with one of the best horror books of all time. I think Nailbiter is up there too, so that it sits up there with that. But like, I came into it late, and I'm sad I came into it late because of this. I had it.
You should have listened to your LCS when he told you
Yeah.
you wanted it a long
But
time ago.
I had it towards the back end, and as it hits issue 27, but was unable to like try. I wanted to push it down, like up, I mean, like towards 10 or 9 or whatever. I just couldn't, and then it continues the story, and I think it's great. I think the best thing is that they're trying to create this world around it too, with like House of Slaughter and then this Book of Slaughter thing. But still, the number one main storyline is still the best of all of them. And I'm just looking for more stuff to come in 2023. I think it will make an unbelievable TV series when it eventually comes out to be a TV series. We had this best female characters in comic books. Erica Slaughter is up there. I think
that was on mine way back when. Yep.
And it's just something that he has created. And this, the reason I wanted to wait on the book that could potentially take a 2-year hiatus and come back, I think this is it. I think this book could be that.
I think everybody would be right on board.
You could just say, okay, we'll wait. We'll wait for the next book to come out. Maybe he'll come up with a couple one shots, but no, like he took a small hiatus, like every book between volumes has to do. But like, I think that when he came back at number 27, had a freaking ash can.
Yep.
Or not 27, 25, 24.
25 had an ash can. Yes.
Had an ash can.
Yep.
Like, how do you come up with an ash can for a book that's in the middle of a like? It happens, but like this is a very odd thing. It's because
everyone was excited. Everyone wanted it. One per store on them. Yep.
So I think it's his best book. I think there's other books he came out with, like The Closet this year. This by far is his best book out there. So number 2 for me is Something's Killing the Children.
You know what my number 3 is? Something's Killing the Children.
There you go.
Yeah, I had it for 3. For the new story arc that launched, I think is great. I love the depth of it. The more background, the characters, learning more about how the entire world works within Something's Killing the Children. But yeah, that's my number 3 one. The only reason I bumped it down there was because it's such an ongoing series of the year. It's like it's one of those ones, we didn't have like a number 1 drop. We didn't have. So that's the only reason I had it at number 3 was because it was an ongoing. But it's actually, looking at it, is the only one on this list besides Saga. But Saga had that big over back. Where Somebody's Killing Children was the only one on here. It's not Spawn. It's not like pick an ongoing series that is in the hundreds counts or whatever. This was the one that we just continued moving through the series. But I put it on the list because it's so relevant to me and to my shop.
Yeah. It's one of those ones that's it's always going to be, like I said, there's a possibility next year, if it's continuing on, it could not make the top 10 because it could dip in it. I just feel like there's never been a dip.
And it's funny because I have people that, so 15 ends the first arc, and then you get into the Erica's origin. And I had people that were like, oh, that kind of lost me a little. I loved all of it. There's no part of it to me that I am not as invested in as any other part in it.
I will say yes. The end of the first arc into the story arc of her, it felt like almost like a jarring change. It was like hunt monsters, and then we'll find out who Erica Slaughter is. But in the same sense, I felt like it needed that. It's like almost like
we needed to find out who Erica was and how we got here, and getting that started your House of Slaughter.
Yep.
Your what the houses are and what the origin of this all is, and started creating your bigger picture. And I could see this is another one to me that I think could go on for a very long time, because you can continue world building the way the Saga does. They said Saga's at like a universal level, but you could continue building and building on this and changing, and never getting tired of what's going on in it, because it's not just a hack and slash against a monster. There's all of these other bits and pieces of it. So Something's Killing the Children hits my number 3, and honestly probably could have been higher, but that was the only reason why for it. But yeah, I can't say enough good stuff about it. I ordered my t-shirt. I got my Something's Killing the t-shirt.
Yeah, see. Did I mess up the numbering here? Did I figure the
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yep, you did. Fine. You jumped ahead of me. You cut me off after Saga, or I would have done Something's Killing the Children, then you would have done Something's Killing the Children.
That works out great. So let's have you do number 2 and number 1 anyway. That was my fault. Okay. This is the first year we're doing it this way.
All right, number 2. What's the furthest place from here?
See, I knew it was going to be out there for you, and I honestly, it's an unbelievable. Again, remember we talked a little bit off air about how like certain things invade your mind and make things better or worse? Is it because I'm pissed off about this whole vinyl record thing?
The vinyl record thing. So, all right. So, Matthew Rosenberg, Tyler Boss, does what is the furthest place from here? I think is possibly the best trade I read of the year of all the trades. And I got to tell you, folks, I read more than one trade here and there.
Yeah.
Like, I read a lot. And I think this was probably the best one. Environment can create it. I was on vacation. I was laying on the beach. It was sunny. I was drinking a beer. And I read it, but I could not stop. Like, it became that's it. Every once in a while, make sure my kids aren't drowning. Yeah, everybody good. Right back into it. That's it. I'm gone. I'm sucked into this world. It was just fantastic. Still an ongoing series. So while this started this year and the trade dropped, we have more coming of it. I'm excited to see what the next arc goes to and where we're going. The unique story, the unique release idea of having the vinyl records, which I think would be an interesting tie into this, where the vinyl and the music is so important to the main characters that we follow in this. It'd be really nice if they release the damn things when they said they were going to. As I'm sitting on numerous comics that cost extra to the store for no reason, because they're supposed to release with the vinyl, and they send me the comic and they bill me, and they don't send me the record that's going to come out eventually.
Well, here's my question to you though. So it pissed me off when I heard this information. What?
You have one, right?
I have 1 and 2.
You have 1 and 2. Okay, so you have 2 of them so far.
Yeah.
And I have at least 2 more comics sitting here with no record. Yes. Is there 2 or 3?
3 now, because it just came out.
3 comics sitting here with no record. That's the way they're supposed to release. It's a bundle deal. It's supposed to be together. That's the main point of it. You guys are killing me, Image. I don't know what I don't know if it's Image or whoever they signed up with to do these records. Yeah. Somebody is killing the comic world with this, guys. Seriously.
And so the funny thing is I saw a post on CNN or something like that said, for the first time since the 80s, Taylor Swift's new album sold more vinyl records than CDs.
Wow.
Because of all this vinyl push now.
There's a huge vinyl push, vinyl collectible. And let's
here's my question.
The majority CD people are just going to listen to the digital version of it.
Exactly.
I don't remember.
Here's my question to you, Paul. Is how does she sell that many vinyl records that they can't get?
We can't just get.
There's a shortage of vinyl records, but she was able to sell that many, and I can't get a stupid comic book record.
My sister-in-law Yumi out in Hawaii, she loves Taylor Swift, and she's gobbling up all the record.
Yeah, exactly. So we
can't get vinyl because
we bought one because Taylor, my Taylor loved it, and so I bought one for her. But like, it's just the funniest thing. I'm like, okay, so other people can get their vinyl records made, but we can't make these stupid. They're 45s too. They're not even full-size records. So it's less vinyl.
Yeah, and I think there's only like 1 track on each one, right?
There's like 2 or 3 tracks, but yeah, it's
yeah. We're not asking for a lot here, folks.
No, come on. Bye.
Yeah, so
okay,
all right.
but
so
what's the first thing? I agree with you. It's a very, 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 very good book. The other thing I will say, Matthew Rosenberg and Tyler Boss, oversized issues. They're all thick issues for $3.99. That's another thing. They like one of those weird things. I love that Saga's $2.99. Still, they kept that. It was Spawn's $2.99. What was the Nightclub came out at $1.99 this year.
By the way, that's really annoying as a comic store to try to have to create barcode pricing for this stuff. The $6.66 comics, I didn't order them because of your price, folks. Okay, I wasn't going to create another barcode. I said, no, I'm out. I'm not even ordering these damn things.
But so the $3.99 for a 40-50 page book is a crazy thing.
I mean, volume 1 trade it's thick.
Hefty. So which is awesome because I did love the story on it. I love the idea behind the vinyl records. It was one of those things that probably seeped in my brain if I was making an honorable mention because the freaking records on here. But that's not the quality of the book. The quality of the book is amazing.
The book is fantastic.
The book is fantastic. I will say.
And interesting. You're post-apocalyptic. You're following these children. The whole world is children only.
Yes, and I actually have a note on it.
We don't know what's happened to the adults. We don't know who. There's somebody out there that's above them. Kind of gets you into that Nice House on the Lake thing where there's somebody else out there providing for them, but we don't know who it is. We don't know what it is. We're afraid of it.
One of the comparisons I heard, and a loose comparison, was a post-apocalyptic Peter Pan world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I got that.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, so I was like, that was pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And also the idea that each person in the record in the Academy has like a record that they're supposed to be about them. Like it's like their record.
That's like their soul. That's where everything goes into that. So if you're part of that, and everyone's often to like factions and they all live, independently. And that's what the main one we follow all live in a record store. And that's it. They find their record and then they're only allowed 1 copy.
Yeah.
So that one copy is yours, and there's no more out there. And then when you pass, your record is burned or destroyed or gone. So that way it's never again told. Like that's it.
It's just a cool.
It's such a unique
like
idea. Like,
Matthew
what is
Rosenberg
your
killing
song?
it.
You know,
Yeah.
what's your song? What's your album that makes you? So
another long name though.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
That's my number two.
Number two. Okay, so I have a theory
now.
You were gonna do one, but here's a theory on it right now.
Okay.
Is that both of us got to this point, and there's a book that's not been said yet. So my guess is just like anything, is that why don't you say yours, and then I'll agree with you.
Okay. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
8 billion genies.
8 billion genies.
8 billion genies. There we go. We have the same.
8 billion genies. So 8 billion genies, Paul.
Number one seller. It has to be the number one seller in the store as far as floppies go for the year of numerous prints of it.
Was it 4 or 5 prints, I think?
Yeah, we sold out of them the way we sold out of like Last Ronin.
Yep.
I can't get back issues. There aren't any. Like you can't get them. So every copy up through issue 5 and 6 and stuff sold out nationwide, and you can't get them. So I unfortunately have a customer that missed one, and another customer was like, "Well, I want to get my friend doing it." You're like, "How do I get my friend in?" I'm like, "I don't know what to tell you, dude. There aren't any." Like,
I got a signed copy right here. You want to buy it?
Right.
Which, by the way, I know Lance listens to this podcast, so Lance, yes. You still owe me. Okay, so first of all, if anybody doesn't know, 8 Billion Genies is by Image. It is written by Charles Soule and Ryan Brown, the co-creators of Curse Words, which also is a great series.
Love Curse Words.
And I wrote my notes here. Ready for this, Paul? Wow. Just wow. That was the book is visually stunning because it's just the way that he is able to artwork in that as well. And I love this because Ryan Brown actually colors his own artwork in this, which is amazing. A unique story and told in the most perfect way. 8 issues. Each issue deals with something else. It cannot be an ongoing. If it was an ongoing, it would muddle everything. Yeah. I think the fact that it's a limited 8-issue
we had to have a beginning and an end.
Yes.
And that was it.
Storytelling vessel that it is in is amazing. So basically, if anybody doesn't know what 8 billion genies is that it's very similar or simple. 8 billion people in the world each get a genie with one wish. And people wish for smart things. People save their wishes. People wish for stupid things. I want to be a dinosaur. I want all to be dinosaurs. I want to be a spaceship in my yard. I want the
world to be square. I want the world to be flat.
Stupid wishes like I want to own a comic book store. Like that's a stupid thing. No. I want to run a podcast. Stupid thing. No. The fact that this is cool and they created this idea, they created it a couple of years ago and it was called 7 billion genies at the time because there was less people in the world. And so they actually had this thought for a while and they finally were able to make this with Image and it's just the story. And again, I don't think we'll give it away much. We're into issue what? 5?
6, 7?
5. 7 comes out. 8 comes out. I'm gonna look this up. Hold on.
All right, we're up there. I know we're getting up there. Yes, I have it as my most anticipated read of the year. I cannot wait for the trade of this. Yeah. I already am taking orders for the hardcovers. When they drop, I can't. Okay. I read issue 1 and I'm like, I am 100% sold.
6 issues. 6 issues as of November 23rd. Issue 7 comes out February 1st. Issue 8 February or March 1st, and then there's gonna be obviously the trade.
In the trade, I think the trade drops in April for the hardcover, if I remember correctly.
So again, unbelievable. Not to give away, like I said, it's not gonna give away much, but it kind of adds to the storyline. You get the wishes at the very beginning of this, the very first issue. Everybody gets a wish. Or genie, they look very similar to them, but they're these blue, but they have like if you wear glasses, it's wearing glasses.
They're all different. Cool. Yeah. Some of them look like superheroes because that's what you envision yourself as. Sports stars, this, that, whatever.
You can ask it as many questions as you want. You can't
your little sidekick.
Yep. You can ask it, is that the question is that your wish? Cool, do it. And
then boop, they're gone.
The coolest, I think the most necessary feature that they wrote into this book is the bar. And the bar is, I think you find out at the very beginning of the whole series, which is basically the guy who owns the bar makes his wish to make that no wishes that are made outside the bar or anything that happens outside the bar doesn't affect what's going on in the bar. And I think that gives you some sort of
safe space
anchor to have things go on that don't have to worry about, like, first of all, Ryan Brown has one background to deal with in that bar and the characters that are in that bar. So if you make a wish on the outside and someone's in the bar, it doesn't affect that person. And so that's a really cool, I think, necessary feature in it. I won't give out any more details about the rest of the story that goes on. But it is curse words esque in a sense that the two of them make this amazing, heartfelt story with craziness. Because I think there was
crazy magic elements to it, but you have this like inner like depth to it, this inner like mainstream importance.
Because there's soul to it. There's a soul to it. There's a soul to curse words, even though it's craziness. There's still the soul to it, and not soul as in Charles Soule. But I also wanted to connect really quickly is the fact that you said one of the best trades you read of the year was "What's the Furthest Place from Here," and not only is that one of the best trades of the year that you talked about, is that the guy who wrote the best book of the year bought that trade at your shop.
At my shop. So true story.
Pretty cool. And
that is.
But yeah, 8 billion G's, and it's been optioned. Amazon optioned it for TV shows, movies.
By the second issue.
Yes.
By issue 2, it was optioned. And so I can tell you as an LCS, it's not common to sell out of issues all the way up into the higher numbers. Usually your first one, maybe a second issue might, and then you start having some trailers kicking around, and like every issue is just gone. Like I can't.
I don't know if I can't sell this book enough to people. I think it's one of the greatest books that I've read in a long time.
I have a hard time because people ask me what I should read. I'm like, well, I tell you what I would like to recommend, but I can't actually get you any if you want to read it.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the trades. That way we always have, I think this would be one of those books that I always keep the trade in stock. We always have something killing the children. And it's amazing how many copies of that I'm still selling today. Yeah. That Garrett went back through and had to reorder 1 through 5 because we were running out of them again. I hate Fairyland. I always keep. 8 Billion Genies I will always keep. I think
it'll have to be April or May's book for the book club will have to be 8 Billion Genies. Yeah. Like when it comes out, I think it'll be great to do that.
Yep.
I think that's amazing. I think I was not surprised to see. I almost switched Something's Killing the Children to number 1 and put 8 Billion G's number 2 just so we would have 2 different.
I'm glad we have the same.
I'd say it works out well.
Great minds think alike, so we must have done this right.
It's the book of the year, in my opinion, and I think that there's only 2 issues coming out next year. 3 issues are coming out next year. It could have potentially been up there on the book of the year for next year. But it's one of those weird things. I'm glad that we had a couple of ongoings. We had a couple of mini series, 2 issues, 3 issues. I think we had 2 books that ended. I had a graphic novel on mine. I think that's a great consensus of what's going on. And I think with your store, our lists combined is the epitome of what's going on at Galactic Comics in Bangor, Maine. I think that people are buying independent books. They're buying these books from creators that are really well written creators, but some of the new creators too. Like
maybe this is what's killing stuff like Marvel in all of the quality control of it, is that we're having such a much of a better push and quality to indie books and all of your independent options, and you have so many to choose from. If you want to go in with Boom, if you want to go in with IDW, if you want to go in with Image, if you want to do something like a smaller like Scout, or you can take what you really truly want to create and go do it. And you don't have that freedom if you're writing Captain America. You don't have that freedom if you're writing Batman. And maybe that's why we're seeing the quality that you and I both feel like is kind of lacking in the Marvel universe now, is because these creators are like, I don't want to be controlled by something.
Correct. And they launch into it. And you don't have, like with the 8 Billion Genies, and if they decided after issue 1, then in issue 8 they want to do something completely different because the sales of it or the whatever, all they have to do is Ryan Brown and Charles Soule just have to be like, hey buddy, do you want to do this? Cool, sounds good. And then they do it. They with Captain America, you can't be like, I want to make Captain America this. You have to go through all these different things, and there's books that are connected to it that you can't put Captain America in jail for 3 years if he's showing up in all these other books.
In Avengers and this and that. So, you can't say, oh, you know what, I was gonna have Cap run into Doctor Doom. You can't. Doctor Doom's busy. He's over here doing this.
So that's what's cool about this, and it's independent things. And again, there are people that are creating worlds in a sense, like 8 Billion Genies might have other things that come out in the future with this Amazon deal, whether it's a book from Charles Soule, or if there's like mini series or there's other stuff that come out. I mean, obviously Something's Killing the Children with the House of Slaughter and Book of Slaughter You're going to see these different things that come out that connect to it that might see things, but obviously Clementine is a offshoot of The Walking Dead, and so on. So you might have these different things that are connected in a sense, but the books themselves are just stellar on their own. But yeah, that's a great list, dude. I'm pumped about that. I think let's get into quickly so we don't last forever on here. I can't believe we talked. This is one of the longer ones in a long time.
Closing in on 2 hours. Yeah.
Yep. Is prior year books that we discovered this year that I can't believe we didn't know about or knew about and just avoided it. And that to me on mine is The Beauty, Jeremy Hahn and Jason Hurley over at Image. Great book about an STD that makes you beautiful. And it's an STD that everybody wants because it makes them beautiful. But all the other complications that go along with that and so on. It's a great book over there. They went 30 issues, maybe 29 issues. It one of those books that ran into the pandemic, and the pandemic hit before they were able to finish it. And then they realized that they just needed to come up with one special at the end to wrap everything up and release that. So there was a gap between the final issue, or like issue 27 or whatever, and 28 because of the pandemic. But it's only a 28 or 29 issue series. But the last issue came out like a year and a half after the second to last issue.
Such a mess from that.
It's
the pandemic just messed up so much
and
stuff.
then the other one that's a little cool and interesting and fun, or not fun, I say interesting, is did you hear what Eddie Gein done? That's obviously about Eddie Gein, the serial killer, or killed a bunch of people and ate them. That was a great book. It won a bunch of awards for graphic novel work, black and white, sketchy, like pencil, no inks kind of thing. It was a great little book there. I love that. It was very, very, very good. If you're into that true crime or historical serial killer stuff,
become such a big thing right now.
It's well worth it. And then the one that's going to be on your list too, I'll just say really quickly, is Revival over there by Tim Seeley.
I don't know how we missed this book. I don't know how I'd never heard of it. You'd never heard of it. And then we both read it and we're like, oh my God, like, how did we miss Revival? This book is fantastic.
Excellent book. So you have anything else to add to it other than Revival?
So I actually never read Saga before. So
Saga.
So I sat down and read Saga and couldn't stop reading Saga. I just finally sat down and discovered the enjoyment of Usagi Yojimbo. Stan Sakai work from back in the like mid 80s. Really great read. I absolutely love Usagi. So that was one. And actually Curse Words, which wasn't on here, but I forgot that I did read this year. Sat down reading Curse Words and loved it, and then had to go find the Scotty Young variant for it when I turned my omnibus page and saw that there was a Scotty variant cover, and I'm like, damn it. But I got that one really quick. So
that was the Revival thing too. It's a random, it's not even a variant cover. Like Revival 13 is just a Scotty Young cover. And it was just like, how the hell did we not even see that?
The funny thing is, I own that. I already own it. I bought it like in an auction somewhere, and I'm just like, Scotty bought it. Like I don't even know what this book is. Never heard of it. I put it in my Scotty collection, and now I'm reading it, going, "Hey, wait a minute! I own this. Was that Scotty book that I never read? Like didn't know what the hell it was. Didn't care. Just
that's amazing.
Stuck it in my Scotty collection.
So good. And then I got you, and I tricked you into reading the recount. So that's a good one for you to have on that. I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so recount should have been on here as well. I didn't think of that one. I thoroughly enjoyed the recount.
Coming back in 2023, we'll have it here first.
Yeah, can't wait.
So I'm looking forward to a bunch of books. I mean, I did this top books, anticipated books to look for, or anticipated movies and TV shows to look for in 2023. However, comic books are a little different of an animal because you really don't know a lot of the stuff that's happening in comic book industry. Like, a couple of months in advance, but like, we don't know what books are coming out in November or December. We don't know that yet. We work on books for years and years and years. So there are some books that are coming out in early year 2023 that I'm looking forward to. But again, we don't know.
Who knows? It's such an interesting market of who knows what the next thing is.
Correct. Yeah. So episodes wise for the podcast, we definitely have some cool guests coming up. I mean, we're going to talk to Specs comic book creator David Boer, Daniel Krause, who wrote Year Zero, also wrote the Living Dead book, along with George Romero. Adam Caesar and David Stoll, who wrote Dead Mall and drew Dead Mall, are going to be on. Kevin Scott, Nick Brokenshire from Dead Mall, or Dead Seas, as well as Kevin Scott from the Star Wars fame.
I'm enjoying Dead Seas right now.
Yes. Rich Koslowski, who wrote Farm System, which is a graphic novel based off of like minors and majors of superheroes. So like you get drafted as a superhero and you get trained and then you become a major league superhero, which is kind of cool.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Mark London, CEO or COO of Mad Cave Studios, comes on to talk about that stuff, as well as his book coming out in March called Hunt, Kill, Repeat. Brandon Crane and Ben Heller from the Stephen King's It miniseries on TV back in 1990 will come on not only to talk about that, but also talk about their trip to Bangor, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. They stopped by Galactic Comics.
Yes.
And they were here.
Cullen Bunn, who wrote Door to Door, Night by Night, as well as a bunch of other stuff.
So much stuff. Cullen Bunn is like one of the mainstream horror comic creators out there, I think.
I just agreed to go with Rich Douek, I'm going to say, and Alex Cormack, who wrote Breath of Shadows. This is an IDW original creator-driven series coming out in 2023. Travis Gibbs, who wrote Granite State Punk. It's coming out on Scout Comics, as well as he wrote Coins of Judas, who comes out in January on Band of Bards.
Okay, I don't think I saw that one. Yep.
And Shane Grant's going to pump on here to talk about his new Slaughter on the Set.
Nice, Shane.
That's a big couple of months coming up here on the podcast. Obviously, subject to change without notice. Shit happens.
It does. True story.
But yeah, there's some books that I'm looking forward to this year too. I put on that list to FOC with Paul. There'll be some cool books coming out. I'm excited for. But again, it's so hard to do with comic books. I could give you the next 3 months of books that are worth seeing, and then after that, it doesn't.
And then you have no idea. As soon as you get your previews and previews world out, and that's it. Everything after that, you never know.
8 Billion Genies trade.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
All those are great. I think Clementine book 2, I mentioned that. Those are all great. So those are all coming out this year as well. Other than that, I don't know what else there is.
Continuing I Hate Fairyland. We got the volume 2 I Hate Fairyland continuing, which is funny that wasn't on either of our lists.
No.
Nope. I
only 2 issues. 2 issues. So
yeah, it's 2 issues. I kind of gave it a skim. And it's another one that I obviously want in my trade collection. So yeah, I mean the artwork for it looks beautiful. Issue 1 was really fun. Like reading through it was really fun. But I want to sit and read it in my trade. Yeah.
And they did do a very good job. Scotty did do a very good job of transitioning it and how the other book ended to getting her back to Fairyland. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it's just like almost like a prisoner who gets released after 30 or 40 years back to society and he doesn't know how to cope and doesn't know how to do it. So like almost does a crime to get put back into jail.
To get back to jail, yeah.
It's almost like that in a sense, but sweet. We're kicking off the year with the longest podcast of the year.
Holy crap. Now the question will be, is when you do the greatest podcast of the year, does this podcast make it?
That's a good question.
Will this be on there?
It's more likely to happen because it's the earliest podcast of the year. And that's one of those weird things. It's like, if I did an average views or average listens, we'll see. But because of the fact that it comes out in January, you have 12 months to potentially listen to this one episode. The episode that came out last month is not, but technically last month's could be the most listened to podcast of this year because the
way it falls over.
But otherwise, Galactic Comics is on 547 Hammond Street in Bangor, Maine. And you can go to galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com.
And if you are interested in following our book club, Capes and Tights does a review, and all of our previous books. I'm working on having all previous books available to purchase right on our website, so you can follow along wherever you may be.
Very limited quantities right now, but I'm sure you're ordering more. But Something's Killing the Children is January's book for the book club. So volume 1 of that is available on there as well. Galactic Comics and Collectibles.com. I believe if you go to our website, capesandtights.com, and look at last month's review, there's a link to it at the bottom there. I'll try to put it in the post for this podcast as well. Check that out. And also, most of these books that we picked are really good. So they're hard to find, but if you can find trades or one of the things I will say, go to your LCS, like Paul's shop. But if you can't find it at the thing, give the creators' websites a shot because there's a possibility you might have to pay a little bit more because it may have a variant cover that's not available anywhere else or it's signed. But a lot of this, like this, my 8 Billion Genies copy that I have right here came from Ryan Brown's website, and it was like cheaper than you could buy on eBay, and it's signed by both Charles Soule and Ryan Brown, which is pretty cool. So check out the creators' websites as well too. There's independent creators as well, their businesses as well. So
support them. Support your LCS, support your indie artists and creators.
So Paul, I will see you on Wednesday, and have a good rest of the week. I don't know what you have planned, but did you finish Stealing Superman?
Not yet. I'm still enjoying it. My daughter's enjoying it. Charlotte, my oldest, is thoroughly enjoying that podcast now. And it leads to a lot of discussions. It's really interesting.
Very worth
so
it.
I appreciate that one.
Yes, very, 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 very worth it. But until next time, Paul, follow him on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Galactic Comics on all of them. Fine, just search.
Just find us. You'll find us.
And if you're in the Bangor area, stop by the shop. Have a great conversation with us about how independent is better than everything else.